I'm pleased today to be joined by Nick Massey, who is the founder of Ice Age Meals. The company has been around for a number of years, was also on Shark Tank, notably. And I'm actually a customer. I actually just came, I was telling you right before we hit record that I came from having one of
Hey,
Ice Age Meals. The meals are great, very healthy and easy on the stomach, gluten free, paleo.
dairy free, sugar free, no chemicals, no preservatives. We work real hard on the ingredient list. So that's I'm glad you noticed that.
I'd like to begin with this question. What's your philosophy of work?
The number one when they interview entrepreneurs, the number one attribute that contributes to success is hard work. And sometimes you'll get lucky and you find a unique opportunity perhaps, or there's a lot of different things that can happen, but they're all going to take hard work. I wake up early. My mind's always thinking of new ideas. I'm really focused on planning and accomplishment. It started at a young age when I was about 8 years old. I got a paper route, and I lived in 10th Street North in Fargo, North Dakota, where it was like 40 below at times in the winter, and just really, I guess I was surrounded by hard workers too, but from then on, I've been kind of an early riser my whole life and not afraid to put in the work.
Is that what drives you? Like, is it just a natural drive, or do you feel like you have to kind of push yourself to work as hard as you do, or does it just come naturally because you love the work, or is it just sometimes you love it and sometimes well, kind of going through the motions?
We talked a little bit before about I am, and like I'm a Christian guy. I have been most of my life, and one of the big verses that we have actually on this banner right up here, if you could read this, it says, "Whether you eat or drink or whatever you do, do it all for the glory of God." And I really feel like, I study this guy named Oswald Chambers each morning, and he talks about how there's this other verse that says, all things are possible through him who gives you strength, right? I'm sure you heard that. And what that really mean to him is the small things, the mundane things, the things that are boring or like irritating to do, not these great heroic things, right? So for me to answer your question, I think it's a natural drive and I don't really have to think too hard about it. There's times I have to remind myself, like, I'm not really good at doing repetitive stuff or mundane tasks, but whatever I've got on my plate for the day, I just do it to the best of my ability.
But in terms of revenue, if you're comfortable sharing, where is the company at today, and or how many employees do you currently have?
Just to, I guess, backtrack and see how it started and then where we went to and then where we are now. And what we try to do at each step is take everything we've learned up to that point and make the best decision that we can. And we got up to the point after we were on Shark Tank, we had to get up to like 45 employees just to fill the orders from being on Shark Tank. And one of the cool things is this facility we're in right now is a huge freezer. We had seen this, I found this, it's on the way to the dump, and I was making a trip to the dump and I saw this freezer for lease sign. I was like, well, I'll check that out, and was able to meet with the owners of the property and tell them we wanted to buy it. They were trying to lease it. That road was being paved. This was all before we knew we were going to be on Shark Tank. And then when that thing went, we didn't know what to expect. And then we just happened to basically a couple weeks prior to our show airing, we sealed the deal on this new facility. And if we wouldn't have this spot, I don't know what that would have looked like. So anyhow, really quick from like a small group of four, I think we had four people just getting started to now we got 5,000 orders and we have to ramp up and build this team. Then we expanded our kitchen, which is at a separate facility, and kind of grew that out. Then the challenge became to maintain that overhead, right? So now you have this freezer facility, an expanded kitchen facility, and 45 employees, but now you're not on Shark Tank. Does that make sense? So then we had to really push hard, and I was able to do pretty well for a while and get up to, um, man, close between four, like around $4 million in revenue. And then we hired, tried everything from like ad agencies to in-house marketing executives to you name it. We've tried everything over the
Mm.
years, but ultimately got to the point once the pandemic came that really kind of put our feet to the fire, just tested us. And we had a couple challenges there. One was with dry ice. When that started, we had dry ice as part of our package. You notice now when you get the meals, it's just the meals in the box, right?
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
dry ice.
Very simple. Yeah.
So we were able to, again, it all turned out to be a blessing. Take the dry ice, remove that from the box, turn the freezer down, and then fill the box completely with meals. And then we switched from like a 2 to 3 day shipping model to next day.
I'm curious though, the pandemic, what was it that put your feet to the fire, as you say, with that? People didn't want to order the meals as much for
No,
some
I mean,
reason
on
then?
that end, the business was good because people were starting to buy stuff more, right? Especially for us, we were positioned well, but then the example was that we ran out of dry ice. They used the
Yeah.
CO from, or the CO2 from the refinement of fuel. It's a very clean CO2 to make dry ice. And then when everybody stopped driving their cars, they ended up shutting down a bunch of oil refineries. And subsequently, there was no CO2 to make this dry ice. And then they started shipping some of the what dry ice was available. They were shipping a lot of the vaccine. Remember that?
Hmm.
Frozen
Mm.
on dry ice. So basically went from we don't have any dry ice to sell you anymore, and our model was built around dry ice. So
Mm.
that was the first step, figuring that whole thing out, changing our packaging kind of on the fly. But all of that costs money and takes time, and
Mm.
was a big challenge there. So many times people want to add things, and when you come to like the culinary perspective, people for so long was adding more and more and more, and now it's really come down to simplifying.
Mm.
What can you take away? Is there anything you can take away to make it better? And now, like even to for me, my favorite thing is just like meat with salt on it, grilled over, a wood fire, and I don't need much more than that. Maybe a jalapeno or some hot sauce, and I'm good to go.
And as you're doing this, is like, and in the middle of the pandemic, you're solving these problems, you're trying to simplify. Is money also basically being burned because again, you have the overhead of paying the employees, and are you just sort of like looking at the numbers month to month and you're like, all right, like we're just burning cash right now, but you want to keep everyone employed? Is that what was happening, or was it
Yeah,
different?
I mean that at the end of the day, that's what it is. For us, we have a little bit of a delay on a situation like that because we have a freezer full of meals.
Mm.
So we had at that point we were holding, man, we got up to like 90,000 meals in stock, right? So what it is you still have revenue coming in, right? You still have the revenue coming in, but you're not producing anything. So you can pay your employees, but you're not restocking your meals in the freezer, and that's only going to last for so long. So we had them doing projects like just, deep cleaning and whatever we could come up with. Um, but eventually we had to have them stop working, and we finally got through it and the trays came back in stock. But I mean, whatever, it cost us a lot of money. Then in like by 22, it all came out in the wash. We lost about $560,000 in 2021. 2023 in the summer, we had a freezer malfunction, and that was misdiagnosed. And that was, it ended up being a $100 part. They thought it was the compressor. And in the process, we ended up losing about 20,000 meals.
Yeah.
And that again, you're just like looking at this, it's just a total nightmare and you don't know what's going to happen. And sure, I mean, just I can't even explain it, but we get a call from the insurance agent, and here they said that we had all of our meals insured for the retail value. So basically, this huge challenge became they bought 20,000 meals at the retail price from us, and that allowed us to keep going. I mean, just insane stories I could tell you over and over.
Just reading, I remember reading in preparation for this that part of the story, which was covered by another, I think it was like the Shark Tank a fan of Shark Tank. He has his own blog. He follows up with people who have pitched on Shark Tank,
Okay.
and he was following up with you at one point and telling part of your story, how you did send that email, which you mentioned. And I don't remember the exact details of what was in the email, but it was something to the effect of, look, everyone, like sales are down and we're not going to be able to continue, making these great meals unless, you know, sales pick up. So if you'd like to support us, please place an order or
Yeah.
increase your order. And just reading that, I was thinking, wow, like, that takes guts to do. Because I think a lot of people, they might say like, oh, well, I might look, you know, publicly not successful or something like this. I'll just shut it down, but
Yeah.
you actually just put yourself out there and it turned out to be a blessing or help to turn the company around. Is that all accurate? Do I have those details right?
For me, I've always been from the start. Like I don't know. I mean, there are some stories, but the whole Shark Tank situation, aside from this, just the story of what happened when it went to be on there, but you know, I don't know how many entrepreneurs are put in that situation where like you go from zero to like 150 overnight, right? Like we just watched that happen in one aspect, it's like the dream come true. I just couldn't believe it. Like I was in Jacksonville, eh, Florida. I was at the seashore, the Seahorse Hotel with my buddy Nick Knutson and Jay Phelan came, and I was doing a culinary ninja class at a CrossFit gym on Saturday, and the next day I had a pop-up paleo dinner with a chef friend of mine, and like just like working so hard, bro. You can't even like you can't explain it. Only few people who've worked with us on some of the projects know what it takes and like what we've put in to get to where we are. But um watching that, just like dollar wise, between when that thing aired, by the time it got to midnight, we used the Shopify platform and we had like we, within an hour we had $100,000 in sales, right? And
Wow.
like that's for us, that was a huge amount of money at that time, right?
Yeah.
And then just kept going, and you wake up the next morning and now you have another, couple $100,000 on top of that. And you're just like, I mean, in that aspect, it's a dream come true. In the other aspect, it's like you're put in this position where you're forced to perform. And if you don't, we ended up having about $28,000 in people who canceled their orders because they couldn't wait. And we would put people in like, hey, this is your estimated week of shipping your meals, and then we would try so hard and then we would miss the deadlines, and it was a trick. And then the other part was like we didn't even really know what we were doing at that time. We were using these styrofoam coolers and trying to do dry ice, and the meals were getting damaged and they weren't frozen enough. I mean, it was just a nightmare, right? So
Uh,
so through that experience, I started studying, okay, are there other entrepreneurs who I can talk to who are having huge problems? And then you start to find like these stories of these people who were like borderline suicidal or gonna kill themselves, and like the day later they some huge breakthrough happened, and now they're willing to tell their story, right? So
mhm.
holding it all in, pretending like everything in life is cool and they're these cool macho entrepreneurs, but really were about to kill themselves, and then now only because they found success are they going to share their story. So I kind
Yeah.
of dedicated myself to like never being that way. Like I don't care. Another, Oswald Chambers, this guy I talked about, he talks about how Paul, the guy who wrote most of the New Testament, said like he had no interest for what the crowd was doing. He only wanted a glance of the conductor. He only wanted the approval of the conductor,
Mm.
right? God, not man. And
Mm.
that's really how I try to do it. Like, I don't say I don't care what people think. That's kind of a weird phrase to say,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Mm.
but it doesn't really affect me. If you think I'm a cool guy and successful, like that's great. And if you don't, like that's fine too. What it comes down to is for me, like when I'm at home and I'm up early in the morning or I'm going to bed and I have my fan, like how do I feel?
Hmm.
The way
Hmm.
to feel good about yourself is to eh, do what is right and just and fair, right? Obviously, be an upstanding person, but work really hard.
Yeah.
And the best way to feel good is like a job well done. If at the end of the day you can look back on the day and feel accomplished, like you're gonna sleep well, you're gonna feel good about yourself, and it doesn't matter what other people think.
Hmm. Hmm. You're also spending less energy wearing a mask. You're just being authentic. I think it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with. You're really striking a nerve with me too, because it's something I've thought about. It's like, when I'll be in the middle of facing a problem, and I'm actually facing one right now with my company, and my philosophy at the moment, or my decision at the moment, is I'm going to be my authentic self, but I'm not going to talk about the problem until I've solved it,
Mhm.
because otherwise in my mind, I'm like, how does this help me or even the audience if I'm just kind of like talking about the problem? I mean, do you call it authenticity? Is that your word for it?
Yeah, I mean, I like you said, what there's it's just a waste of time to try to. I mean, I grew up in that culture, right? I grew up like in, like I said, Fargo, North Dakota, and even now we're blessed enough to have a lake home there, so we live there for 2 months out of the year, and we noticed a drastic difference between, northern Nevada
Mm,
and Minnesota. In Minnesota, everybody kind of wants to see what you have and do you have more than they have or do they have more than you? And like they want to rate your success and they want to know how much money, like I
mm,
know about it because I grew up with that, right? And we were
mm,
actually on the wrong side of the track. So I really knew about it. We were very poor. Um,
mm,
so authenticity. I mean, I guess I've gone from like maybe falling victim to that when I was young. Like you don't have really a choice, or maybe you don't have enough guidance in your life to get you through that, or get around it, or not do it. But I left that place like the day I graduated high school, and
mm,
there's a reason for it. And I'm not bashing everybody there. Like it's just kind of part of the culture, perhaps. And maybe it's the same here and we just don't notice it. But I'm never going to pretend to be someone who I'm not. I'll give you the quote from what's his name? Bob Marley. You know that
mm.
guy?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he said the greatness of a man is not in how much wealth he acquires, but in his ability to positively impact the lives of others, in his integrity and his ability to positively impact the lives of others. So,
Mm, mm,
I learned a lesson recently just about, well, I don't know, last March, I had this big fascination for a long time with people who would drink soda, large amounts of soda.
mm,
And up in the Midwest, again, that was kind of where it started, where at Walmart, I would see these people just loading up on soda, like the whole cart full, and I'd get videos and pictures of them. Sometimes I'd talk to them and ask them, and sometimes I'd post it on social media, right? I'd put it on Instagram. And then I had this guy I found in Carson City where I live, where he had a whole cart full of Coca-Cola because it was on sale. And then I had these two ladies with like buggies. They couldn't even walk through the store, but they had the whole buggy full of soda. And I talked to them, and they said that they stock a fridge on their street, and they anybody can come by and get a soda out of their fridge. I was like, wow, that's pretty cool. Whatever, just funny. I just try to learn what these people are doing. And then I saw this another guy with a buggy loading up soda, and that was the only thing he was buying. And I took a video and I posted it on my story. Okay. And then this guy, some kind of dude, I don't even remember his name, but what he does, he finds people who are like tearing down other people, and then he has this army of people who come and like attack them, right? And he's supposed to be like the boot camp positivity dude or something like that. Well, what happened was somebody saw my story of me posting a video of a guy buying soda, and they screenshotted the video, right? They grabbed it and then they sent it to him and then he posted it and then this whole army and we got to the point where I got death threats, people calling Ice Age Meals, leaving voicemail saying, "You call me back, you beep, 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 we're gonna effing kill you." And like, it was crazy, dude.
So I'm
And
trying to understand that. So it sounds like it was you took this video, but it was taken out of context. People thought that you were like
yeah, and I don't know if it's out of
hating on someone
context. Like,
else or
I
something.
actually took a video of a guy buying soda and I put it on there. How they like
Mm,
interpreted that was that I was thought I was better than this person or I was tearing them down or something. And like I said, this is a
mm,
lesson I learned. And how I'm relating it to your question is like, I'm not going to help positively impact the lives of other people by being inauthentic. And I'm probably also not going to impact positively the lives of others by posting a video of a guy drinking soda, right? So like at the time,
yeah.
I didn't think it was that big of a deal. Apparently to certain people it is a big deal. The challenge I have is like if this is the positivity army who's trying to make the world a better place, like threatening to kill me is positive. Like I just have a hard
Mm,
time making that connection. But if you look at I haven't posted since then. That was like on Paleo Nick, I used to post pretty much multiple times a day. I stopped. I stopped that day and I said, you know what? I'm gonna take a step back and look at like, do I really need this in my life? Reflect on did this negatively impact people's lives? Do I think I'm better than other people because I don't drink as much soda as they do? Or, and I don't know the path forward on that. Like my goal is to teach people to cook, and that's a really good way to do it through social
mm,
media. I haven't been doing that for, 8 months now. And I don't really know if I'm going to come back in that regard. So,
mm. We oftentimes, I've certainly found this in my own behavior sometimes when we face like a really challenging problem, there are three options for how we can deal with it. We can go ask for advice from someone else, we can distract ourselves, or we can sit down and journal or just try to think it through. And I think it's the last one where, in my experience, not I usually delay, but I have sometimes delayed doing that because when I would do that, instead of asking advice from someone else or going distract myself doing something else, I don't tend to get like a breakthrough. So for example, with this one problem that we're wrestling with right now for the business, I was out last night and I was at a cafe just kind of, doing my thing. I write fiction as a hobby when I'm not working. And I was thinking of texting a buddy of mine who's also an entrepreneur and be like, hey, like I want to get your input on something. Like I'm just making this decision right now. But then I stopped and I was like, I had to leave the message. I was like, I'm gonna try to like give myself my own counsel right now because I think unless the person is going to unless you really know that the person is going to really try to understand you and the problem and the situation and help you to make the right decision, sometimes you can just predict, I think, what some people may or may not say, or they might, because they're your friend, they want to kind of like help just like whatever you're biased towards rather than the right answer. So I didn't text him and I drove home and I was just kind of talking. I was talking with AI and journaling, and that really helped. And I came to this great realization of what decision I was going to make. I think Pascal, I didn't really know much about Pascal's life biography, but he said all of man's problems come from not being able to sit alone in a room with his own thoughts.
but on the other side of that is a quote I recently heard or it was a guy who did triple Ironmans, right? So you do 3 days in a row, you do a full Ironman, which is insane, right? And not a lot of people do it, but then they were interviewing and asking him, how do you do this?
Like an Iron Man, you said?
Yeah,
Mm.
triple Ironman,
Wow.
right? So three consecutive Ironmans.
Hmm.
And he said, how I do it is I learn to stop listening to myself and start talking to myself and being
Mm.
your own coach.
Hmm.
Right. And there's so many things about like positive words, and Bruce Lee talked about that, right? Don't say negative things about yourself because you're all of your cells are listening in your whole body, and you'll start to believe that. And
Hmm.
especially for like the younger generation now, I feel this calling to like try to get the kids to break through depression and suicide is a huge thing because what do? They're just listening, right? They're looking at their phone and they're looking at people and they're just listening to like, I'm not as good as this person. They have more than me. They can do more than me. They're better than me. They're just
Mhm.
listening, listening, where you have to learn to coach yourself. And like in your situation, applaud you for doing that and like gonna send a text, but then having the restraint not to do it.
Mhm.
When you send out a correspondence, you're likely going to get one back, and that's going to take your time to manage. Or if you take that same time in a quiet room with your own thoughts and you coach yourself through it, you can get pretty far.
Would you recommend entrepreneurship to other people at this point in your journey? Because I used to. I used to say, oh, it's the greatest thing ever. You're going to grow as a person. And I still believe that it challenges you like nothing else.
Good question. I I think the founder of what is it? NVIDIA. Have you seen that one where he says, I if I had to do it all over again, I would not do it. He says I would not do it.
Jensen Wang, yeah.
The neighbor guy here, we used to have this forklift company next door, and this guy ended up passing away, and they just auctioned off all this stuff he'd collected for 50 years. And I ended up talking to the guy who was going to buy the business, and he just talked about, he said, you know what, you get to a certain point where you're so far into it, you can't get out. You
Mm,
can't. You're so invested in it. And I mean, yeah, I'm a huge fan of entrepreneurship. It drives creativity, forces you to work hard. It turns you into a problem solver. Like, my father-in-law said last summer, it was just the coolest thing. He just said, like, Nick, you're one of those guys that there's nothing that's going to stand in your way. There's nothing that's going to stop you. If you set your mind to it, you can do it. If you study Brian Tracy, he's got a lot of like the concept you talked about of the subconscious. If you can make your to-do list the night before, then your brain's going to solve some of your issues or find a better way for you to do it while you're sleeping, right? Like that's so cool. You can't tell me I can't do it. Like I'll always find a way. And maybe I wasn't always that way, but I kind of was. Even when I was in elementary school, we had Mrs. Heeb, her brother, a fourth grade teacher, her brother was one of the astronauts, Rick Heeb. You can look him up. He came to our school and talked to us and he told us, hey, you can do anything you want with your life. There's nothing you can't do.
mm,
Where most of what I see in Minnesota, where I grew up, is like, nah, you can't. You just fall in line and do what everybody else is doing, and that's just how it's gonna be. And it's like, I never really liked that, and I always believed the astronaut, right? Like, do I want to listen to some lady who's mediocre in life, just barely getting through, or the guy who's been to space? So be careful who you listen to, but if you listen to me, I'm going to tell you to do entrepreneurship. Give it a
mm.
shot.
But I mean, you also what you're saying there makes me think again, like the idea of a mental diet as well, in terms of what ideas go into your mind. You brought up Bruce Lee. He said, "The mind is a fertile garden. What is planted, weeds or flowers will grow."
Yeah, and on that is like weeds, you don't even have to plant, they're going to grow naturally, right? The human tendency is negative thought. But the
Mm,
thing I teach my boys is positive people have the same amount of negative thoughts as negative people. They just manage the thoughts differently.
mm,
So, I mean, if I could encourage anybody, it would be it's what you let in that counts. And that applies to both your physical diet of food and your mental diet, your spiritual diet, or however you want to look at it. It's what you let in. It doesn't matter what religion you are or what you believe. I happen to be a Christian and believe it, Jesus is the savior of the world. But if I look up Philippians 4, verse 8, I'll read this. It says, finally, brothers and sisters, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is admirable, if anything is excellent or praiseworthy, think about such things. And like you can't argue with that. And the cool part about it is whatever you have learned or received or heard from me or seen in me, put it into practice. And how it ends, it says, "And the God of peace will be with you."
When we think too much, we do too little. Success more in the motion, less in the notion. So
Cool. I like
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
haven't heard that one.
Um, is there anything else that you want to leave entrepreneurs and business owners who are listening to this that we haven't already covered? Any additional or really critical takeaway? What would that be if anything comes to mind?
Yeah, I don't know that it's a single lesson, but I have a little strategy for managing all challenges or mainly just life. Like I use the acronym RAN. Number one, seek righteousness. So each day, that's how I start my day. What that means, righteousness is just what is right, what is just, what is fair. We talked about it earlier. Integrity,
Mm.
doing what is right. Number two, have an anchor routine. That's the A. That's something that you can come back to, that no matter what happens today, tomorrow morning, I'm going to seek righteousness again. And I'm going to start over and I'm going to try to do better, right? The anchor routine. A lot of times it's working out, cold plunge, sauna, whatever that is for you, have an anchor routine. And then the final one for all entrepreneurs and everyone is N, which is never give up. You'll only be able to find out what you can accomplish if you don't give up.
The company is Ice Age Meals. Nick, thank you for joining us today.
Uh,
Um, awesome. And
I
is
got
it iceagemeals.com? Is that right? If people want to come and
it's
say hi?
Get Ice Age Meals. Look at this. Look at this. Three
Get ice.
logos. Yeah, geticeagemeals.com. That's a whole nother story. When we started, somebody bought our URL and now they want 350 grand for it. So
Oh, damn. Well, I mean, I heard a story of how Groupon got their domain name.
yeah,
They kind of a similar situation. I think it was a squatter, but the founder of Groupon, because they were like getgroupon.com
yeah.
originally, something like this. And someone owned Groupon.com and they wanted to sell it for a crazy, unreasonable amount. So the founder of Groupon.com went and he copyrighted Groupon.com and he said, "Look, I own the copyright. You can only sell this to me. So let's negotiate a fair price." Because I tried to, whatever, have a reasonable negotiation in the past, but it didn't work. So maybe we can
Wow.
start now. Because if you sell this to anyone else, you have to disclose that I own the copyright.
I'm not thinking too far in the future. For now, geticeagemeals.com. People can find us, and it's not the URL that's going to stop us because we never give up and nothing can stop us.
Absolutely. Nick, thank you so much.